Dragon Age the Veilguard's been on my mind recently, and certainly not for any positive reasons. I mean, there's nothing to get excited about. The game was unveiled, like 2 months ago? We've heard nothing really since. We've had developers saying the odd thing, giving the odd interview where they talk about how great the game is going to be, BioWare's magnum opus, million lines of dialogue, bigger than ever, but BioWare haven't actually shown us anything really. So if you had no enthusiasm after the gameplay reveal, now we're in August, there's still no reason to have enthusiasm. So I'm certainly not excited. But what I've been thinking about is, despite I think a lot of fans being sensible Dragon Age fans, not just getting hyped for the sake of it for the most part, they've got maybe 1 foot in and they're saying, I'm optimistic, I like the series, but I'm not seeing a lot from BioWare. It's maybe not looking great. Despite a lot of people being sensible like that, I still see a criticism quite often. It's not purely for Dragon Age the Veilguard. I've seen it for other games as well, like Bloodlines 2, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, Avowed, even though I think Avowed will be probably better than those games I've just mentioned. But it's a very common thought or defense that I see, which is you shouldn't be criticizing any games before they come out. It doesn't matter if there's gameplay trailers or whatever. You shouldn't be criticizing any game before it comes out and you've actually played it. If you do, you're simply rage baiting, you're just a toxic gamer, all of that sort of stuff. And again, we're talking about games that haven't come out yet. If it's a game that's been out for 5 years and you're criticizing it without playing it, well, you could easily just go and pick it up. You could play it or even just watch detailed gameplay videos of it and form more of an opinion. So we're not really talking about that. Games that haven't come out before. And what I find is the people who say that, or why you're criticizing it, you haven't played it yet, most of those people, they're usually approaching that from more of an emotional reason. It's not a logical argument. For instance, these are people who have often pre-ordered the game, and they're all in on it, and anyone criticizing it is ruining their good time. They're overly hyped for it, they're excited. All they want to do is talk about how great this is going to be. They can't sleep. I saw someone about the Veilguard saying, I've got anxiety about how incredible this is going to be. It's usually those people where if anyone brings up anything logical, like they've watched the gameplay, it doesn't look very good, those people are ruining their good time, and they're usually the ones saying that you can't criticize a game if you haven't played it yet. Now, obviously this is total nonsense. You absolutely can, and I think it's actually really important. Like, the reason that I like to talk about some of these games that haven't come out yet, but do have a lot of red flags, and in my opinion, I feel they may be disasters, or at least not as good as people might be thinking. It's important to talk about it because this has happened so many times in the past, where we've gotten excited for a game, usually, again, emotional reasons. It's not because of what we've been shown by the game company. Usually it's because, we're just so nostalgic about this series, like a Diablo, or maybe the Elder Scrolls when 6 is eventually around the corner. Just these IPs that are beloved, and people just get pumped for the game for that reason, even if there are red flags hanging around and that sort of stuff. And I feel we've pretty much all been there. I mean, I'm certainly not immune from this myself. Like many others, I've been pumped, excited for a game. It comes out, it turns out to be a total joke, and I almost feel like I've been conned. Like, all this excitement was built up, you showed me the shiny product, the shiny car, and then it was a bomb. If I think of examples, a lot of Kickstarter projects, for instance, I was certainly someone that when Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding service, you can donate, the general public can donate to a game company and then they make the game. It sounded incredible when it first happened. It was like, oh my god, our favorite developers, they're not going to have the corporate boot stepping down on them, and they can't really make the game they dream of because of financial reasons. Now these game developers can make their dream. The reality is, most of the Kickstarter games that have come out have either been scams or they've just totally undelivered and been nothing like what they promised. So I had plenty of disappointments there. If we think of a mainstream example though, Starfield. Good old Starfield that no one is talking about anymore, despite Todd Bethesda saying it was going to be their 10-year game, 10-year plan. Well, no one's playing it anymore. That's not going to happen. But Starfield, that was one for me, where there were red flags, big red flags, but I just didn't want to see them. I was getting excited like a little kid again. Oh, it's going to be the big Bethesda single-player game again. Haven't had one since Fallout 4. We've been waiting like 8 years. I don't think Fallout 4 was the best thing ever, but I felt it was a fun time. Explore the world, do the dungeons, the quests, and whatever. I just wanted some of that again. I assumed it was safe to expect that for Starfield. Now, the gameplay, for instance, that we saw, not good. It looked very, very middling. Then there was the talk about the procedurally generated planets, and I sort of thought, that sounds a little bit weird, but this is Bethesda. They surely are not going to let us down. You've got Todd Howard, self-proclaimed god of gaming. There's no way they can let us down here. Think about all of his great sells, Skyrim, Fallout 4, when he gets on the stage. No. I know he's going to do the right thing by us all. It's going to be incredible. But even ignoring some of those red flags during the marketing, I should have been thinking about Bethesda's track record, because their games were getting worse and worse. You had Skyrim to Fallout 4, which was definitely worse. Then Fallout 76, which was like, if you're making a tier list, that's like well down the bottom in the F category, at least when it came out, when it released. I kind of wrote that off as a spin-off, and I tried to cope and go, no, that wasn't single player. Bethesda, get back to what they do best. It's all going to be great. I ignored pretty much all of that, and I just wanted to get hyped. But I can admit, and I don't think I'm alone in this, if I saw someone criticizing Starfield, I almost didn't want to hear it, didn't want to read it, because like, I'm hyped for this game, it's the most exciting game of the year, and it did kind of feel like my party was being spoiled if I did see people bringing up criticisms of it. So I've been there for Starfield, I've been there for other games, but I've tried to learn from that, and at the end of the day, getting excited for video games, it's not a big deal. Who really cares either way? But I just try and think it through a little bit more logically these days. Like, I still get excited for titles, but I try and at least look at the game objectively and think, why am I excited for this? An example, something like Baldur's Gate 3, like, you could play Act 1 of the early access for years before it came out. There was a logical reason to get pumped for it, because you could play it, and you could see for yourself if it was any good. Larian Studios also had a great track record. They just delivered a couple of very consistent CRPGs, Divinity, Original Sin 1 and 2, so there were plenty of reasons to get pumped for it. I think if Baldur's Gate 3 ended up being shit from start to finish, that would have been very weird. It was just unlikely that was going to happen. Elden Ring kind of the same way. Like, From Software had just been so consistent. If Elden Ring, despite them showing it off, not hiding anything, very open about the game and what we're going to be getting, if it ended up being a total dud, just would have been a huge shock, and you couldn't really blame anyone for that. But it feels like there's a number of games coming out, Dragon Age, the Veilguard included, where some people are just ignoring the warning signs. They don't want to hear them. They're blocking their ears. Red flags, past lessons, they don't care about that. I think about Cyberpunk as well, which I personally really enjoyed, although, to be fair, I was playing it on PC at release, not on a PS4, where it did sound like a borderline scam. But just remembering, like, the hype was unparalleled at that time. Like, everyone was talking about it. The expectations were just so over the top. A lot of people were expecting, like, something bigger than a GTA 6 in terms of everything you could do in the city. And then when it turns out to be more of like a Witcher 3-like in a Cyberpunk city, they all got disappointed. But just the amount of excitement that that game was generating, I remember so many people sort of going, lesson learned, I'm not going to get hyped like this again. But then I see it occasionally from people for Bloodlines 2. Maybe not so much now, everyone sort of agrees it's a disaster, but a lot of people before the gameplay reveal were hyping that up. They're hyping Avowed up, they're hyping up maybe the Veilguard, depending on who it is, Reddit or whatever. It's just ignoring a lot of the lessons, and if you're just excited for it, you don't care what anyone says, that's perfectly fine. This is more aimed at people attacking anyone who criticizes it and says, everyone needs to shut up who is criticizing the Veilguard, because we haven't been able to play it yet, it's not in our hands yet. It's more those people, because that's where it just gets stupid. People criticizing the game, they're doing you a favor because it forces the developers to do a better job, for one thing, and it sort of exposes these games that are overpromising and they're full of shit. The developers, the game companies know it, but they're just trying to get away with not showing you a lot, and then just getting you to pre-order or buy it before having seen anything, let alone play it. These games, the Veilguard, Bloodlines 2, they're doing the same thing, where they just don't show you anything. It's like, and both of them have the exact same thing in common, where they showed us, the only gameplay they really showed us were beginning areas, beginning levels with almost nothing about the gameplay, the level design, big cities or anything like that, big hubs. None of that was included. And then what they both did as well is after we see the gameplay and we're underwhelmed, developers from the teams, they try and like explain things. It's like, you say the combat looks clunky and very, very average. And then they, oh, no, but when you get later in the game, it's really good and you can do all these incredible things, a million spells. Why didn't you show us that then? If you don't show it to us, I'm just going to assume you're lying or you're exaggerating, you're marketing to us. These developers, they have to earn our trust. Like some of the devs, the From Softwares have. BioWare haven't earned it. They might have had it 25 years ago, certainly not now. They need to earn that trust. So don't tell me, fans on Reddit or whatever, that, oh, you just need to listen to them, this is what they've said, you need to give them the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely not. They need to prove that they've got something of value. And until they do, people should be criticizing it if they don't like what they're seeing. And this is just the trend. Very minimal gameplay shown, a lot of text explaining things like BioWare. They showed the gameplay 2 months ago. Now it's text-based interviews or video interviews, but you don't see any more of the game. It's the same old gameplay from June or whenever it was, and then the developers just talking about how incredible this is going to be, but you don't show anything. You don't put your money where your mouth is. And I'm expected to get excited, pre-order the game whenever the pre-orders go live. They're just relying on the series name itself, the IP name, and they just think they can trick enough people into pre-ordering when the time comes, spending money beforehand purely based on that emotional hype, and that's it. I think that deserves to be called out, especially when there's a lot of indie or smaller games, new IPs that underperform, because less are willing to give it a chance, because they don't have that nostalgic, kid-like excitement, the good memories from playing something like Origins that was actually good when BioWare did things of competence. I've seen some arguments, like I'm convinced 99% of the complaints on this forum are from people that have never played Dragon Age games before. Actually, no, most of us have played Origins. If we hadn't played that, we wouldn't give a shit, because Veilguard looks awful. Anyone's investment, whether they don't like it or they like it, is because they played at least one Dragon Age game that they like. So this is just dumb. Don't hate an honest single-player game you haven't tried yet. Look, this game is being made by people who are against microtransactions. I know that because I personally know one of the people making it. Oh, well, all concerns totally out the window. I mean, how could you doubt the "my uncle works at Nintendo" meme? And I think this would be the case anywhere. Most studios, the boots-on-the-ground devs who don't really have any say, they probably don't like microtransactions. That's not the problem, it's at the top. It's the people at the top who love the microtransactions, and then they force you to design the whole game around it, and you're just doing your little job. There's probably 300 devs working on it, one person not liking microtransactions. That makes no difference. And I've got to say as well, this is no longer special. BioWare probably thought they could get away with this. When they started work on it in 2017 or whenever it was, they probably thought that just making an average single-player RPG without microtransactions was going to be super special. And they would just, it would sell because of that fact. Not really true anymore. Because of the Baldur's Gate 3s and so on, people actually expect quality. Simply no microtransactions isn't enough anymore. So nice try, but I'm not just going to bend the knee purely because of that. The game looks crap. There's nothing about it that looks positive, microtransactions or not. That's not going to sell me on it. And just who this game is appealing to, Veilguard is appealing to. I've said this before, but it just feels like LGBTQ simulator the game, and that's literally it. So they're designing it for a tiny percentage of the population, and it's like, I think for most people, they're looking for a new RPG to play. They're thinking about the systems, the combat, the characters, the story. All of those things, they're difficult to get right. That's why we all have our favorite games that get those things right. With Dragon Age the Veilguard, they seem to be saying, oh, all of that stuff it's bog average. But look, you can put a penis on a woman in the character creator. There's so many same-sex relationships, all pansexual, whatever that means, the companions. That should be a selling point for you. I get the feeling that's what the devs care about. And you look at some of these people, for instance, this is Reset era, it is Retard era, and someone posts, God, I hope they don't release this only a few days before the election. I won't be able to focus on the game for several days, even in a best case scenario. These are the sorts of people that they're aiming it at. And this is what I mean by red flags. Like, the culture of the team, it's rotten. This person, this fan, represents the development team. Let's be real. These are the sort of people making this RPG that regular people are meant to get excited about. And I'm not going to talk about every single Veilguard red flag in this video. I've talked about them many, many times. But just think about it. When people say, oh, don't criticize a game if we haven't seen enough gameplay or you haven't played it yourself, you're just playing into the video game company's hands, because this is what they're realizing. They used to be more open. They would have like playable demos, or they would show a lot more of the game at an E3 or whatever it might be. And they've realized if they show a game and it looks bad, they actually lose way more sales than if they don't show the game and they just talk about it, or they let people online communities, word of mouth, hype up something that doesn't really exist. And when I say doesn't exist, it's a good version of the Veilguard. People saying, Dragon Age 4, the Veilguard, we've waited for it for so long. Just be grateful. Just get excited. And then if EA and BioWare barely actually show anything, there's a group of people who will just pre-order. They'll just have that hopium, they'll get excited and do it. But if BioWare show the rest of the game and show us that it looks mediocre, and I really think it's going to be mediocre, then people might actually be turned off, because word of mouth will get very, very negative, and that is when a game bombs, when so many people are talking about it and are against it. In the past, I don't really think that happens so much, and I think a big reason for all this is just how long games are taking to make. Like, the average RPG seems to take 6 years, a long, long time. Imagine if Mass Effect 3 took 6 years, and then we got that ending. I think a lot of people would have talked about it more, and that game would be seen in a very, very negative light, rather than, yeah, look, it was decent, but they let us down at the end. Because BioWare released Dragon Age Inquisition very quickly afterwards. They released all of those games, all Mass Effects, very, very quickly. That doesn't happen anymore. There's a lot more riding on these games, EA and so on. Like, they can't afford for a single release to fail, so they pull these desperate strategies of just not showing a whole lot. Now, I don't think this will actually work for the Veilguard. I think they're on the back foot now because of the terrible reveal a couple of months ago. They'll probably have to show more. Bloodlines 2, kind of similar. Reception's so bad, they'll probably have to show something. But this will keep happening next year, the year after. There'll be more games like this. Red flags, you have to look out for them. You have to look for the clues. There's no point just getting blindly excited, especially if you're thinking about pre-ordering. If you want to just get excited, whatever, but please don't pre-order. Please don't reward this behavior, because it is pathetic. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.